Voyage fraught with difficulty and danger, but it was also rich in discovery and full of surprises. Today, after almost 6 centuries of isolation, China is once again looking outward. The Chinese are also taking a fresh look at their past. The gigantic fleet that set sail in 1405 fits the image of China as a great nation today and yesterday. Researchers are combing the archives. How much do we know about the fleet? The story of the imperial fleet begins in 1402. The successor to the first Ming emperor had wiped out all his rivals except for one, Prince Judi. Planning to rebel, Judi secretly raised an army. Civil war broke out. On the 13th of July, 1402, the rebels captured and very nearly destroyed the imperial palace in Nanking. Prince Judi emerged victorious. He wanted to restore the Middle Kingdom to its former glory. As emperor, he called himself Yongle, everlasting joy. But Yongle had to legitimize his rule. He had power, but not the mandate of heaven. He devised ambitious projects to reinforce his authority as emperor. During his reign, the Great Wall was extended by 1,400 kilometers to protect the empire from the Mongols in the north. He moved the capital to Peking and built a gigantic palace complex, the Forbidden City. He ordered that the accumulated knowledge of all China should be collated. Thousands of scholars labored to compile an 11,000-volume encyclopedia, one of the greatest compendia of knowledge ever. But Yongle also wanted to add new knowledge. In 1403, he gave the order for a project unique in the history of China, the construction of a huge high-seas fleet. For the early 15th century, the technical challenge was immense. The fleet was to have hundreds of ships that would broaden China's knowledge of the world. The emperor put the eunuch Zheng He in charge. Styled the Grand Eunuch, Zheng He was the first eunuch to hold such a high office. During the Civil War, he was the emperor's most important confidant. But how was he to build such a huge armada? In 2003, exactly 600 years after Yongle issued the order to build the fleet, archaeologists stumbled across clues. On the edge of the city of Longjiang, near modern Nanjing, they noticed some pools of stagnant water up to 400 meters long. What were these basins for? To find out, they excavated the site.
这个工作呢，从2003年的8月份一直到这个2004年的7月份，将近1年的时间。这个我们做呢，首先就是这个抽水、抽淤，然后呢把整个塘底清出来。这个我们把那个水跟淤泥抽完以后呢，这个在这个塘的底部，这个发现了34处这个当时那个这个木结构的建筑基础，很密集。一般平面形上是长方形的、方形的，还有那个椭圆形的都有啊。它这个本身做的结构不一样。 从东往西排过去一直有34处，这个现在我们就当时因为发现这东西呢，当时觉得原来不知道什么东西，是什么样的遗迹，现在看来这当时都是当时在塘里造船时候搭的那个建筑平台的一个基础。
The remains of a dry dock. China has had dry docks since the year 1070. In Europe, they weren't developed until 1495. And even then it took centuries for the idea to catch on. These are immense shipyards, far too big for building normal vessels. The archaeologists are sure that the dockyard was built for a huge project, like the construction of an armada. Tools found during the excavation provide insight into the shipbuilding methods of the time. All the tools of one particular trade were found together. There were 4 different workshops. The work was specialized and highly organized. Special marks scratched into the tools show they are imperial property. 600 years ago, this shipyard was China's biggest construction site after the Great Wall itself. Tradesmen came from all over China. The work employed over 20,000 craftsmen. The entire scientific and technical know-how of the time was at Zheng He's disposal. But he had to have the first 60 junks ready in record time, just 2 years. And the emperor wanted them much bigger than normal ocean-going ships. So Zheng He developed a new type of ship. It combined the flat-bottomed hull of a junk for shallow waters with the large capacity of an ocean-going vessel. For stormy seas, there was a second keel. How were these ships built in the dry dock?
这是造船使用的平台的基础，可以告诉我们当时这个船是怎么造的。现在通过我们这个从东往西这么一个遗迹的这个排列，我们可以初步认为，当时这个船应该就是什么东西向排列造的，东西向排列造的，就是说不是，因为有些专家认为这个船可能是南北向这样造的，这样东西向造了以后有一个最大的这个理论，就是说这个塘本身400多米长，就是完全是有可能造大船的地方。
The historical sources speak of junks over 120 meters long, a real test for the shipbuilders because the ships also had to be easily maneuverable and stable. Wooden junks are not as robust as ships of steel. Are the sources exaggerating? Could a junk be 120 meters long? Could such a ship really weather an ocean storm? A find in Fujian province answers those questions. In the 1970s, workers found the hull of a 13th century junk. It showed that China's shipbuilding skills were already highly advanced 200 years before the fleet was built.
在泉州所出土的，发现的这泉州的海港上发现那个大的木船，那是宋代的。你说这些船是小船啊，是内河航行，那还有理由说。但是泉州那个船，它是海船呢，它海上航行，它的舱也是那种设备。
The Quanzhou boat was extremely flat-bottomed. With its square bow and 24-meter length, you would expect it to be narrow as well, but it was 10 meters wide, with wooden bulkheads acting as stabilizers. The bulkheads also gave the boat watertight compartments, a highly advanced feature that improves stability, especially for flat-bottomed vessels, and minimizes the risk of water flooding in if the hull is pierced. In the 13th century, the Chinese already had shipbuilding techniques that would meet modern standards. The inspiration for sealed compartments came from bamboo, the most stable natural fibre in the world. The ship's hull reproduced the structure of a stem of bamboo. The aim was unsinkability. In Europe, the bulkhead technique wasn't invented until the 19th century. The first European ship with watertight compartments was the steamship Great Eastern in 1858, and it would be decades before the system was perfected. The Chinese boats were 500 years ahead of us, said a French scholar in the early 20th century. To build a ship without sealed compartments would be unthinkable today. In China, in the days of the imperial fleet, it was standard practice.